Yeah, you started. Is he using the audio?
Speaker. No sé ya. Yo hay que jugarme.
Hello.
I don't the catch tried.
Yes, Josiah.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Since I'm whoever's connected to the
Who's coming in?
me the computer that's in the brain. Oh.
Are you meeting on
This? No, not that.
this computer right here is connected to anything? Yes, use that computer. Like mute the sound.
But it's mute already.
Not the microphone, mute the sound on your computer.
Okay.
I think we're in good shape.
Nope.
Okay, that should work now. Oh, we're still repeating.
Is there a backup? Yes. Turn off the microphone on the laptop.
Yeah, it's mute.
The microphone, no, the microphone turn off, not the speaker.
I already turned it off.
Is there another? No. You have to turn off the microphone. There's probably a second microphone. Audio.
I mean, I did this.
Hello? Hello. No, there's a second mic someplace. No, not it. Input. Volume off.
the WebEx meeting.
Okay,
So
whose computer is this?
uh,
Whose computer? is
that's
this?
my computer.
Someone set it up on your computer.
Well, I just connected to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this account is upstairs.
Okay.
So I use the office computer to
Yes.
host it.
Okay,
And then I use this one to join my room.
use this.
Yes.
Okay, okay, that's good.
I think it's good now.
Okay,
If I close my computer and leave, will this shut down?
sounds like it's not going to, it's not. But I turned off, well, you know, I turned off the microphone because that was causing the echo.
I'm anxious to, you know, I don't know.
Is there an easy way for me to plug in?
Pardon?
Is there an easy way for me to plug in?
Plug in your power. Yeah,
Well, HDMI or for slides.
I think,
I think you need to join.
Join the meeting.
join the
Yes.
WebEx meeting and then,
Then I
Wait,
can-
Don can make you, the presenter. Wait, Don, if you were gonna make him the presenter,
I think I didn't set up any privilege. I don't think I've set up any privilege, so everyone can present.
everyone can.
Yeah.
Focus.
Yeah, actually, I have problems, and last time you told me to have like 1, 2, 3, 4 links, because I only have 5 links. And I could go between the motor.
Okay, so we can talk it out. I just wanted to say hello to the speaker. Hey,
Hello.
Josiah, good meeting you. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Glad to do
Yeah,
it.
well, good to have you back though.
Yes, it's always good to be here. I'm in the waiting room. Is that the right place or the wrong place? Is anybody else ready to just have spring?
Spring break.
The ups and downs are the trouble for me. When is spring break?
Supposed to come in like a
Next
lion and
week,
go out
next
like a
week,
lamb, so I'll just have to wait till the end of March.
I might have to leave in 15 minutes and have a meeting. If I could, reschedule it, I'll come back. He's coming.
Why so many people like to attend online?
We change it. Well, actually, you are not on campus today. So Rick is not on campus. Ellen is not on campus. Dr. Fine is on campus.
So you're now working for RTX BBN?
I am.
Yeah.
I've been there for about 6 months.
Now, that's part of the BBN based in Boston? Or-
The BBN headquarters is in Cambridge. That's right. We have an office in Columbia. We also have one in Arlington, Virginia.
And for this particular, what RTX stands for what?
I don't think it stands for anything.
Oh.
It is the
RTX is Raytheon.
RTX is the parent company like Alphabet is to Google. So RTX is the big umbrella. Raytheon is a subsidiary. Collins, Pratt Whitney, these are all under the RTX umbrella. BBN technically sits at the corporate level. So we're 600 researchers who do everything from cyber to biology.
And you work out of the Columbia office?
Right.
Oh, good.
I used to have a colleague, Honeywell, he moved there, Richard Byrne, but he retired now.
Mhm.
So one also, he was here, and there is one I know in Boston, I believe, he's famous historian, I believe. I'm not sure if he's still there or not. He used to be active in the community, attending conferences and so on.
Well, RTX, the whole giant company is like 200,000 people. It's very big. All around.
I was talking about BBN,
Just BBN.
Yeah, BBN, yeah.
Yeah, they were their own company when the ARPANET was brand new. They were under Raytheon for a while, and then they've gotten shuffled around.
I used to have fond memories of BBN because they were big in AI in the 70s.
Before it was popular.
That's right.
And acoustics and all kinds of things.
So would everyone want to take some food while they are still warm? Because later they will be cold.
Yeah.
And also some coffee.
Yeah, people should eat. You won't offend me if you're eating.
So is this recording now?
I'm not sure. Let me ask. It's not clear.
Be back to allow the speaker to join.
And that worked.
I think you might have to do that from your whatever computer it's running on.
Okay.
Tell it to be recording. I don't know if you can.
The host can. Who's the host?
One cat.
The host should log in and start it.
Oh, it says recording in progress on my.
Okay.
my
That's cool.
You're the host role now.
That's a lot of authority and power.
Yeah.
Not sure what I can do with that. Are we waiting for people? Should we start? Should we?
I don't know. We start to.
Yeah, I think it's okay. We should start. It's 11:06.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Josiah. I feel a little awkward standing in front of the screen when the camera is sort of pointing at my back. So I might just try and do this. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
All right. It's lovely to see you all. Thank you for coming. Thanks to the people who are online. I know a few of you, but it's nice to meet those I haven't met before. I am a graduate of UMBC 2013. It's been quite a while now. But I get back to campus once in a while for lectures, for awards, and things like that. So that's been great to stay involved. I still live and work in the area, so it's very convenient and close for me. I am here as an ACM distinguished speaker. This is a series that ACM offers for people who want to invite speakers like me, and there's a whole catalog of others who give talks. This is one of my talks. But I've been an ACM member since I was a student. If you don't know, you can buy a lifetime membership to ACM, which is like, I don't know, 10 or 20 times the annual rate. It's a lot of money, but you only have to pay once and then never again. I get the magazine every month. I get access to the digital library. If you're a student going to be in this field for a long time, it's a pretty good deal. It will save you money in the long term. So I'm glad there's a chapter here. I'm glad everybody's involved. Keep that up. So as I said, my background is in computer science, also in music. I have a bachelor's degree in violin performance. Lots of people have that interesting intersection. And I spent the majority of my career so far at the National Security Agency just down the street. 19 and a half years there, doing both research and practice. So I was doing cyber offense, cyber defense, and cyber research. I was working there while I got my PhD here. They helped pay for that, which was very nice. And when I left the government, I was just ready to contribute to something else. I had contributed a lot to that mission. And I knew I had half my career left. And so I went to industry, a little cyber company called Trail of Bits, who does a lot of cybersecurity work. And about 6 months ago, I joined RTX BBN. We were just talking about that. I have developed a lot of multidisciplinary interests. So instead of sort of going deep and staying just in my field, which was cloud forensics when I was here, I've gotten interested in psychology and economics and political science and this intersection of cybersecurity with lots of other things. So you'll see some of that reflected here. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about also stemmed from my time at the National Security Agency. None of this is sensitive. It's very open things. But I continue to advocate for cybersecurity science. I think that's important. I wrote this O'Reilly book 10 years ago. A couple years ago, I wrote a book about cyber myths with Gene Spafford at Purdue. And in December, a book helping people transition into cyber mid-career from some other non-cyber domain into cybersecurity. So I like to do that. I like to publish. I like to talk. And you're going to hear a little bit about that next. So this little boy's name is Lyndon. This is the Naval Academy Stadium in Annapolis. And I want to pose a question to you, which is, who protects Lyndon's safety? Who's responsible for that?
Many.
Many, yes. Who are some?
Well, obviously, you start with the parents.
Parents,
And
yes.
then you talk about the local authority and the management for the stadium.
Sure.
Then you take this, local police, state police to keep it safe, the area from any threat. And also you have the government, at a higher level, and this is including cyber attack as well.
And the adults that are near him.
Yep. The people just in his community.
Yep.
I would say Lyndon also looks out for himself to some degree. He will look out for himself more as he gets older. The manufacturers of his clothing are looking out for him, right? And his toys to try and not harm him, cause him pain or physical safety. But yeah, the point is there's a lot of layers to protection in our physical world and online. It's not just ourselves. It's not just the people we can touch and see, but many layers out there. So that is true also in national security. It is not just the government's job to protect this country, the American people, the people who reside here. People have an individual responsibility, right, to look out for themselves to some degree. There are legal mechanisms for doing that. Some people carry guns, some people put locks on their doors, right? Those are individual actions that we take as people, right? Our apartments, our homes have locks for that kind of reason. There are also lots of companies who play a role in national security. Microsoft computers run a lot of the government. So Microsoft bears some responsibility for patches, for updates. They don't exist just to serve the government, but they want you to be safe if you have a Windows computer too. Security companies like Symantec and Mandiant, internet providers like Verizon, all of these people, if they are doing a bad job, would have a detrimental impact on national security and cyber defense. There are a lot of organizations, even nonprofits, these ISACs, if people familiar with the ISACs, these are groups of like sector companies. So there is an ISAC for retail. So companies like Target and Walmart belong to this information sharing and analysis center, an ISAC, where they share information about, well, what's attacking your business? Is the ransomware that we're seeing unique to our hospital, or is this prevalent in the whole healthcare sector? There's a financial services ISAC. There's a national defense ISAC. So companies like the ones in the middle share information in closed, trusted communities. That's really important. There are many, many organizations in government that play a role in security. And in the United States, this is broken up by law and statute and budget. So the things that the Department of Justice, the FBI, can do domestically, internationally, are very different than the Department of Homeland Security or Cyber Command. Each of them has a particular role. They can't do things they're not authorized and allowed to do. When I was at the National Security Agency, they have a foreign intelligence mission. They do not have a domestic intelligence mission. So you can only do the things in government that you're allowed to do. This is sort of opposite. As an American citizen, you can do anything that's not illegal. The opposite is true as a government employee. You may only do what you're allowed by statute to do. And then the international global world, right, especially on the internet, plays a lot of role in how safe are we online. Cyber attacks don't care about geographic borders as much as lawyers would like them to. And so our international partners, our global IT companies, play a tremendous part in how safe is the internet and how safe is a country as a result. There are, I think, as we all know here, lots of attacks. These are not, in addition to accidents, things that sort of happen because of configuration errors or inadvertent mistakes. That causes lots of things to go down. When AWS goes down, it's almost always an accident. But things like the target attack or interference in the US elections, those are very deliberate cyber attacks. So that's particularly what I want to focus on today. Now, this talk was titled American Self-Defense in Cyberspace, and I feel like we probably should talk about what those words mean. So when I say American, I don't just mean American people. This is the very old painting called American Gothic. These are meant to be stereotypical American people. But American businesses in this country count as America. The geographic borders, the physical space that we sit in counts as this country. So American self-defense has to do with all of those sort of aspects: people, organizations, businesses, geographic soil. I also use this phrase self-defense. We're going to talk quite a bit about that because it means a lot of things. For one thing, it means both offense and defense. So that's kind of an important aspect. And there are differing definitions sort of about what qualifies for self-defense, when you can invoke it. One definition here is that you can use reasonable force. That reasonableness matters here a lot, to protect yourself from bodily harm from the attack of an aggressor if you believe you're in danger. So this isn't like go out and start hitting people with sticks. That's not what self-defense generally means. It means you think you're under threat and you can defend yourself, sometimes with force. These definitions matter a lot in the law, and so both US and international law. And so we sort of need to agree what those things mean. But I encourage you to sort of wrestle with, does a thing count as self-defense or not? Because I'm not here to tell you what it is or where the strict lines are. In the Charter of the United Nations, they talk about self-defense, and they're very clear about this because they say you only have the right, countries that are members of the UN only have the right to attack after you're already under an armed attack, after an armed attack occurs, right? So an individual or a collective self-defense, if an armed attack occurs against a member, then you can defend yourself. So that's a very reactionary version of self-defense, which is somebody comes and bombs you, you can defend yourself in response to the attack that you've just done. Not everybody agrees with that definition, not least the United States of America, who says, we appreciate that. We are not going to be constrained by that. We, the United States, believe that we can engage in self-defense before we're attacked. That's a very different view than all countries. Not everybody agrees with that. But that is the United States' stance in the use of armed force. I had to update this talk in the last couple of days because there's a new national cyber strategy out. If you haven't read it, you should. It is very short. It has about 6 paragraphs of material. Lots of people expected there to be more, but it is quite brief. The first thing that exists in that strategy says that the United States is going to shape adversary behavior. So getting to this sort of proactiveness of self-defense, the US in the strategy says we're going to use the full suite of defense and offense. We will use the private sector to disrupt adversaries, and on and on and on. Some of these things are currently illegal. It is not yet legal, even though this strategy exists, for a private company like Microsoft to hack back, to say, we were attacked by some foreign country, they stole our intellectual property, we're going to go after that attacker and make them stop or get our stuff back. The United States currently does not have a law that allows that, but this strategy is opening the door for that to occur maybe very soon. That is quite a change. The danger some people will acknowledge is that, well, those companies then become sort of an agent of the US government, and maybe now they can be attacked too. They're already being attacked. But if you hack back, does that mean that a foreign country can bomb an American company because they're engaging in cyber conflict? Lots of things remain kind of be worked out here. Now, this 2026 National Cyber Strategy didn't just come out of nowhere. This has been developing for at least the last 10 years. Some of these strategies are no longer active as administrations come and go. They always come out with their own priorities, their own sort of views on things. 3 years ago, the Department of Defense had a cyber strategy. It was also very proactive, right? It said, we will, for example, defend forward to disrupt and halt cyber activity, including things that fall below the level of armed conflict, which is code for things like war. So that said, what this is saying is it's not just about the US defending US networks in America. It says we're going to go into foreign networks, often with the help of the foreign country, like Ukraine, for example. The US government went to Ukraine and said, we are going to help you defend your networks because it matters to America, right? That's defending forward. It's going into a country outside of America to stop attacks before they get against US assets. But that was 3 years ago, right? That wasn't brand new. US Cyber Command, which is the branch of the US military that does offensive cyber, does disruption and things like that, as far back as 2018, had a strategy that said, we are going to do this persistent engagement. We're going to go into foreign, with the help of foreign partners, try to stop attacks before they start here. So this has been developing for, I don't know, 10-ish years. Lots of administrations, lots of parts of Cyber Command have said similar kinds of things. The current strategy is the most aggressive that I've seen, which is we are going to be very offensive. I don't know what that might look like in practice. I'm not in the government anymore, but it could mean quite a change. We will have to see.
So the we in these older ones from 2018, 2023 refer to government agencies, but now the 2026 opens the door to non-government agencies taking action.
That is a difference. In these older ones, it was very much the US government will do this. The private sector will not be engaged, at least in offense. The US government always needs the help of companies in America, right? Because the cyber attackers are going after Google and Microsoft and Amazon, and that has a threat even to national security if they go after those. So there was some degree of partnership, but it was never Microsoft hacking back against a foreign country. That wasn't, there were people talking about it, but not seriously.
This is dangerous because it is very similar to, asking the police to protect them and then allowing everyone to be armed and defend themselves, and fight back, becoming chaos.
Vigilantism is often the word
Yeah.
that is used.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could go very poorly if not constrained.
This is kind of shocking.
are you saying, you're interpreting this updated national cyber strategy as saying that potentially Microsoft, Google are going to be running their own offensive cyber APT shops and trying to hack back, if you will? Is that the interpretation that they're going to go?
I mean, the words, these are the literal words in the strategy. It says we will unleash the private sector. That does include all those companies. They're going to give them incentives, probably also means legal authority there, legal cover, to identify and disrupt adversary networks and scale our national capabilities as if they were part of the US government. Probably they're not going to just say, all right, it's a free for all, because as we talked about, that's chaos. Probably there will be some constraints around that, like these are the kinds of things you can and cannot do. This company can do it, but not this one. There probably will be some guardrails, but this indicates that that is probably coming.
So if I'm Google or Microsoft, to some extent, it's expensive employee time to actually engage in any of these attacks or unleashing of the private sector. Ostensibly, one of the big first motives they might have is to defend themselves from an attacker. Say, hey, this attacker has been hitting us from this IP address for 20 times now. Let's do something about it instead of just responding for the 21st time, something like that.
Absolutely right. And I think that's why the companies are so frustrated. They will often tell the FBI, like, we're being attacked or we were compromised. The FBI is really busy, right? They don't have the resources to defend all these companies. And until now, the government has said, and you can't do anything about it. Well, imagine you own Microsoft. How frustrating is that? You're losing money and you're not getting any help. So you can see that side too. Okay. Pretty interesting stuff going on these days. Right, so we've had the Cyber Command policy. There's a lot of federal and state laws that also talk about what is allowed in self-defense. If somebody breaks into your home, do you have the right to shoot that person? Well, it depends on state law to some degree. It depends on federal law. There's even more questions now. I mean, even more questions in this kind of conversation about, well, what constitutes the start of an attack, or when is the moment that I can engage in this self-defense? That's a pretty fuzzy area. There aren't kind of enough examples to say for sure, and there's no international agreement on this even further. And as I've talked about, like, there's this idea about hacking back. This is what we were just talking about, so I won't dwell on that. Now, you might be asking yourself at this point, like, how is self-defense different than cybersecurity? You should ask yourself that, because those are different words and they sort of mean different things. I would say that self-defense is a bigger umbrella than just cybersecurity. Cybersecurity to me is very much about defensive actions. So a subset of self-defense, because as we've talked about, you can also do self-defense in deterrence and sort of offensive looking actions. So cybersecurity is a means to do that, just like putting locks on your doors is a way to protect your home, but it isn't the only thing you can do. So those things are complementary, and I just wanted to sort of note that there are differences there. Obviously, America isn't the only country in the world. It isn't even maybe the one that matters the most. Other people do self-defense too. There's been a long history of analyzing the Great Firewall in China, which is a way that that country exerts control over internet traffic that goes in and out. There's been a lot of study about how it works, even very recently, but it is one way that they can defend the people, the content, the land of that country by having this sort of virtual wall that they could isolate themselves. They could defend that way. We've seen this week that Iran can do it too. They can use BGP routes to say, if you try to access things in Iran, they don't route, they don't work. And so they've essentially cut themselves off. It's sort of an internet blackout. That works in some countries better than others if the internet traffic sort of goes through narrowly defined internet routes. In America, this would be very hard because there's so many ways out to the internet. There's no one national entity that controls all the traffic in and out. So if you wanted to cut off America from the internet because we're under a cyber attack, you'd have to get a lot of companies involved to do that, right? Even if you said, all right, Verizon, stop routing traffic out of the United States. Well, there's how many dozens of other giant internet service providers, let alone Starlink and everything else. So that this kind of option isn't really feasible today for the United States. Does anybody know who this is?
Peter Pan.
Not Peter Pan.
Link.
Yes, from Zelda.
Yeah.
So Link has a sword initiative. And this is one way to think about self-defense, which is you kind of need both. If you only have a shield, you might fend off some attacks for a while, but you're probably not going to win wars that way. And if you only have a sword, you're going to do damage, but probably you will not also live that long. Not a lot of examples in history where having just one is sufficient. So this is true also for cyber. What is especially noteworthy in cyber is that when you do offense, you sort of reveal your capability, which is if you use exploits, then other people can see them and learn how to stop them. So that isn't true for a sword, right? Everybody can see your sword, know you have a sword. They might defend against swords, but it still works, even though they know you have the sword. If you have an exploit, once you use the exploit and somebody sees it and catches it and develops a mitigation against it, it largely stops working. So you have to be very strategic in how you do cyber offense. You can't just use all your exploits all the time. They will very quickly stop working. Let's talk for a second about deterrence. So deterrence is a theory, a concept. There's lots of literature for hundreds of years about deterrence. This is a way to try and make somebody else stop doing the thing you don't want them to do, right? To convince them not to do it by making the consequences high enough. Your parents used deterrence, right, for all of us growing up, which is stop hitting your sibling or else. And there was always some or else. Because if there's no or else, then there is no deterrence. There must be some consequences and they must be followed through. For many decades, the United States did not respond to cyber attacks. They happened, right? They happened against Target and OPM and US elections, and there were no consequences. And so adversaries kept attacking because the presumption was the US isn't going to do anything about it. That was just the choice that those administrations made. That choice has changed. They have said, yep, it is not okay anymore. When you poke us in the eye, we're going to do something about it. So doing something about it is, yes, deterrence and also that offense. But I want to talk about 3 ways you can do deterrence. There's certainly more. One is just through strong defense, which is if you have really strong walls and people keep like throwing stones at your wall and it doesn't work, maybe they'll stop throwing stones. That's an option. Another is through retaliation. So if you punch me, I'm going to punch you back. Pros and cons to that. We'll talk about that in a second. And then there's one that's a little bit unique to some degree in cyber, which is deterrence through attribution, which is some attackers in cyber want to be anonymous. And if I can unanonymize the attacker, sometimes they will stop. Sometimes they will slow down and say, oh, yeah, we don't want you to know it's us, so we'll back off a little bit. We've seen that work. So first, what does it mean to have strong deterrence and strong defenses? One is to sort of raise the bar for everybody, which is better operating systems, better security in our browsers, better smartphone security. Everybody wins. It's harder for attackers these days because technology has gotten better, right? The defenses of Microsoft and Mac and Linux are much better. It's much harder than it used to be to break into those things. The NSA puts out recommended practices for here's how you lock down your network. Here's how you deploy zero trust and quantum resistant cryptography and all these things to try and raise the bar so that it's harder for attackers. Another part of strong defense is education. Education like here, education like corporate education. I have a private consulting company where I teach healthcare providers who don't have a lot of time or money to worry about cybersecurity just how to look for phishing attacks. What does it look like? How would you know you're being tricked? Because that makes it harder, right? The attackers have to try new things if the users are smart enough not to fall for the easy things. So education is deterrence to some degree. Economics is another one, like not just in the financial sense, but if it takes a lot of time for an attacker to develop a new exploit, that's an economic deterrent as well as a technological one. Because maybe they just don't have the time to spend a month finding a new bug in Chrome. And so they'll go on to something else. They won't attack Chrome. They'll go after some weak browser. So that is a deterrent. So retaliation is another one. I would say one thing that I've learned that I didn't learn in school is that people matter a lot. You should all say psychology. It's really important in computer science because computers exist because of people. It's good to understand people. I didn't do that. I learned that much, much later. Retaliation, interestingly enough, is almost always an effect on a human. There was an amazing program at IARPA for a while that was about how do you frustrate attackers, right? So I can't see them. They're somewhere else. might not even know who they are. But I want to make them mad. I want them to stop. I want them to get frustrated, and I want them to have a bad day. How do you do that? That whole research program was how do you frustrate them? How do you know that it's working? That program has they collected a lot of data. It's on the IARPA website if you're looking for that kind of thing. Has anybody heard of the 5 Ds in the military? Does that mean anything? No? Military doctrine in the United States, some of it in their sort of deterrence is built around these 5 words that start with D. Disrupt, deny, degrade, destroy, deceive. That is true in the physical world, right? When they're bombing or flying a helicopter or using cyber. Those are different kinds of goals that they might seek to achieve, right? They might say, we want to disrupt the adversary's ability to walk over this hill, and they will figure out some plan to do that. They might want to disrupt the ability for an attacker to launch a denial of service attack. They would come up with some plan to do that. That is different than destroying, like than dropping a bomb and so that building isn't there anymore, or deleting a file so that it doesn't exist anymore. So when they think about options, they think about, well, in our toolkit of things, what are we trying to achieve here? And they go about that very differently. But that's insightful to know from the military's perspective. The third part of the deterrence I mentioned was about attribution. Attribution is difficult in cyber, in part because it's a little bit easy to hide, right? So when my computer gets attacked, often I can see where that attack came from, but where it came from might be somebody else's compromised computer and not the real attacker. That is incredibly easy. It is the thing that almost all cyber attackers do. They don't attack from their computer to yours because they don't want to get caught. So they redirect that traffic to some other compromised device. But that means that attribution is difficult. It's not impossible, but you got to sort of track the pace back to where it came from. We started sort of with this presumption that we need self-defense. And I would argue we absolutely do. The world is an unstable place. Every year, this organization puts out a peace index on how peaceful is the world. I don't know about you, but today feels less peaceful than yesterday to some degree. This year feels less peaceful than last year. You can go look at these graphs and you can sort of see the world is not a stable, safe place all the time. And so it's good to have capabilities to say, well, if we really end up in a situation where our existence is threatened or our safety and security is threatened, we should have already prepared ways to defend ourselves. One thing that really interests me in computer science is measuring progress. How do we know that in cybersecurity, for example, this is an unsolved problem? Are we safer today than we were yesterday? What does that mean? And how would we measure it? Who has the data to know? Is it the number of attacks that we see? Is it the lines of code with bugs? Is it the number of people we have to hire? This is a really difficult thing to know. It's a good question to wrestle with. If I have compared this, for example, to healthcare. Like, is America healthier today than they were yesterday? There are proxy metrics for that, like the number of people who got sick, the number of people who died, the number of hospital beds that are full or not full. Those are hard analogies to make in cyber, even though I've tried a little bit. Again, when I was at NSA started to release information to try and help more people. For example, when they told the world there is this email vulnerability, email software vulnerability, they would publicly put this on the website and then worked with the companies to release patches and then said, please go patch. NSA couldn't make anybody patch. That's not their job. But they wanted to know, is it working? And you can see in the press, like, people tried to get attention for, this is a really serious vulnerability. NSA wouldn't have told us about it if it didn't matter. They don't have enough time to do things that don't matter like that. But then, like, months later, that vulnerability still was not patched everywhere. So that is a little bit frustrating. This actually is an example where we have some data because you can see patch status of internet-facing machines. You can go, companies scan them every day and say, yep, these ones are at this version and these ones are at this version. So to some degree, we know, in this case, did the result of that publication lead to more patching or not? And there was kind of a sharp jump and then it plateaued. So we do get data sometimes. There are other ways we can measure progress. There are a bunch of scoring systems in cybersecurity. CVSS is one, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. I've been helping with one called the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, which is not just about the existence of vulnerabilities, but how much are they actually being exploited in the real world. So there might be a bunch of software bugs on my laptop that nobody's ever going to go after, but maybe one of them is really prevalent. So EPSS is a way to share, to document and share that kind of information, what's actually going on in the world. Another research article, study that I did after I graduated with some folks in College Park was to try and measure people who might become infected based on who got infected yesterday. UMBC, for example, knows who logged into the Wi-Fi, and they know what attacks they blocked. So they know who got attacked yesterday, and they know a bunch of stuff about who you are, right? Your name, your major, maybe where your home address is. And so we wanted to know, could we use that to predict if those kind of people got attacked yesterday, maybe the same kind of people are going to get attacked today. This was a really interesting use of machine learning. We learned that this is a really hard problem. There's no one variable. It's not like it was all men yesterday, it's all men today. That wasn't necessarily the case. But again, we were looking to sort of measure results. That style of problem in cybersecurity is really important. So we've been talking a lot about sort of cyber on cyber, right? If somebody attacks me with cyber, I'm going to stop them with a firewall, or vice versa. But that isn't the only way countries defend themselves, right? They use diplomacy, they use military power, they use intelligence organizations. And you can defend, if you're attacked in cyber, your response could be a bomb, right? That is attack, that is defending in a different way than you were attacked. Or if somebody drops a bomb on you, maybe you retaliate with cyber. So we're starting to see that more and more, this sort of mix of what are called instruments of national power. Cyber Command, for example, started using attribution as a way to say, you know what, we just got attacked with malware, and so we're going to tell the world that it was the North Koreans, and we're going to make that malware public so that everybody can defend against it. Right? That was a way to try and deter the North Koreans from doing that again. Because Cyber Command said, we know it was you. We told the whole world, like, you're the ones attacking. And as a result, they backed off for a little bit. We saw the number of attacks go down temporarily as a result of that. Sanctions are another one, right? The US can say, we were attacked with cyber, but our response is going to be sanctions against Nigerian companies, for example. Further down the rabbit hole, one thing that matters in offense are weapons. This is another fuzzy thing, at least in military doctrine, which is what counts as a weapon? Does a hammer count as a weapon? Does built-in Windows commands in my computer count as a weapon? The military has a definition that I don't find very satisfying, which is the ability to create an effect. Well, I can create an effect with the RM command, right, which is to RM files on my computer. Does that mean RM is a weapon? That isn't very satisfying to me. I don't have a better definition, but that is how they distinguish that. I was involved in a defense science board study some years ago. One of the byproducts of that is that we wrote a paper trying to help the military understand the differences between kinetic weapons like bombs or guns and cyber weapons, because they are very different. And for a long time, people who were trained in the military, they understood tanks and bombs and guns. And they tried to apply that knowledge to cyber, and it wasn't working very well. So kinetic weapons, things like bombs, for example, have very permanent effects. When you drop a bomb, there's a hole in the ground. You can't undo the hole. Like, that thing just happens. It's really expensive. It takes a lot of access and money and time to sort of develop those weapons. So lots of sort of attributes on that side. And in the paper, we contrasted them with cyber weapons, things like cyber exploits, to say, it's really cheap. Lots of people can do this. You can undo the effect sometimes. Like, you can bring the computer back. If you took it offline, you can bring it back online. We talked about the fact that if you use it once, sometimes you can't use it again, right? That's sort of brittle. But helping the military sort of understand these things are very different. Like, they are not the same. So I'm going to pivot for a second into some research that I've been thinking about the last year or two. And this has to do with, how do you do something like deterrence and slow down the ability for attackers to achieve their malicious goals, whether that's your personal device, your corporate network, or your nation. So that's what I'm calling sludge, which is like walking through the mud, deliberately trying to slow people down. This comes out of my intersection of computer science with psychology. And something that is in the psychological literature is called choice architecture. Choice architecture says, when you walk down the aisle of the grocery store, nobody's telling you what to buy. It's not like you only have one choice of tomatoes. You have many choices. But the vendors who put the things on the shelf are very deliberate. These shelves are not random at all. Somebody probably paid money to say, we want this tomato sauce at this level right here, so that kids see it, or adults see it, or it's 2 shelves closer to the aisle. Like, this is what choice architecture is. You have choices, but we're going to sort of nudge you towards things. This happens all the time. This is what marketers do. They know how our human brains work really well, and it pays off. It's not that they're just making stuff up. It leads to more sales. They know that it works. Cybersecurity has a lot of this too. There's a lot of sort of optional things that people, like a company might want you to turn on 2-factor authentication, but not require it. But they might annoy you a lot. Apple might say, every time you log in, looks like you haven't turned on 2FA, please turn it on now. And they're going to annoy you with that until you turn it on. They're not requiring you, but they're sort of nudging you in that direction. Password meters are another one, right? If they don't require 12-character passwords, but that meter says, yeah, your password is kind of weak, medium, strong, that is them encouraging you without requiring you to do something. So that already kind of happens in some regards. Honeypots are another one. These are fake machines on the internet. The attackers theoretically could go after any machine. But if they are incentivized, if they think this one over here has really interesting information, they might spend their time, I would say waste their time, on this fake honeypot instead of attacking us, right? That is theoretically a useful thing to do. So 2 behavioral economists, Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein, wrote a book a couple of years ago called Nudge, which is the opposite of sludge. So nudge is trying to help people do things that are good for them, like stronger passwords. Sludge is the opposite, which is I want to slow you down. There's a lot of bad sludge. This book is really about like bureaucracy. How much effort is it to get a driver's license? And they wanted to make it go away. They said sludge is bad. People have legitimate goals and they want to do them. Get all that junk out of the way so people can do what they want. I read that book and I said, well, that's interesting. I appreciate that. But what if it is the attacker, right? I would deliberately want them to have to do a lot of work, spend a lot of time, spend a lot of resources. What does that look like? Sort of the opposite of what these authors were thinking about. But I wasn't the first one to think about this. Cyber Command 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago has said, we want to frustrate attackers too, right? We want to slow down. We want to throw sand in the gears. These are the kinds of words that they would use. The French did this in an election in 2017. They had a whole bunch of fake documents and they knew attackers were stealing stuff. And so they came up with hundreds, thousands maybe, of these fake documents just to waste the time of the attackers. It didn't stop the attacks, and it's hard to know how much it slowed them down, but that's the kind of thing that I think is really interesting. And I sort of wonder what else is there in that world. So I wrote a paper that got published in December, sort of about a sludge strategy, which is, here's a menu of things that you might want to think about doing. Some of them are very, we call them light sludge, like low friction, where maybe you have to, like two-factor authentication is sort of light sludge. It's a little bit of work, even for legitimate users, but it slows down an attacker. All the way to things that are sort of very high friction, like sanctions, which are really hard to get around. And there's trade-offs, obviously, to sort of help do that. But I wonder what else even exists out there. And this is a really good research topic for somebody who wants to think about it. We consider these kind of costs, which is like how much time or money or maybe frustration, psychological cost, does a particular thing cause to an attacker. So a honeypot, we could maybe measure time. It's a little bit hard to measure money. Things like outing somebody, right? Saying that this is the North Korean malware, that's a reputational harm. So we can sort of measure these things on various dimensions. We just thought it was one way to think about a sludge strategy. We also broke it on another dimension, which is like, sometimes it's just authentic built-in features, right? It's just like your password expires after 30 days, or a website that throttles traffic if you browse it too quickly. And it just says, we're gonna not let you steal information off our website. We're gonna slow you down. Maybe it's login attempts, like you get 3 wrong passwords, then you have to reset. That's annoying for you and for me, but it's really powerfully useful against attackers, right? They get 3 chances and then they get out too. So that's authentic design features. That's different than a honeypot. There's no legitimate reason for having a honeypot. Legitimate users should never even know it exists. If they are on the UPC network, none of us would even know, hopefully. But the attackers might sort of be deceived by that. There's lots of old examples, like decompression bombs are little tiny files where you unzip a bunch of them, and it turns into 10 gigabytes on your system, right? It just becomes very large.
Are those the same things as just zip bombs?
Yeah, same kind of thing. They've existed a long time. I don't know how well they work, but if an attacker's stealing all the files off my computer and one of them is that, maybe they at least get annoyed. Hopefully not annoyed that they tried to hit me harder, but I wanted to slow them down. So these are a menu of things that we put in the paper sort of on those different dimensions, like authentic versus deception, light versus heavy sludge, monetary versus reputation kinds of harms, everything from like just login banners, like this computer is being monitored. You consent to monitoring, you click OK with login. Well, that doesn't slow me down very much. It takes 1 second to click that button. It's an authentic design feature. It probably doesn't slow down the attacker that much. They don't care about whether you're consent to monitoring or not. They're just going to try and plow through. All the way down to like sanctions are a very normal, authentic. It's not a deceptive kind of feature. It has some monetary and some psychological cost, but we're not going to do sanctions for every little cyber attack. That doesn't fit the bill either. What I'm really interested in is what are the other sort of rows in this table that I haven't even thought of? What else could we do that would slow down the attacker against some of these kind of dimensions? Maybe we need more authentic design features. I don't know. It would be interesting to compare their efficacy versus deception to see, well, which one actually works better in practice. There are some papers that have tried to measure, for example, how many honeypots are there on the internet. There are like tens of thousands, more than I thought. But it's hard to know if they're helping. Like if we turn them all off, would tomorrow be? I don't actually know the answer. So that is an idea. There are many more. I am interested in what you all can think of now or later. I continue to be sort of interested in watching these policy developments and what that sort of looks like in practice. Will there be more offense? Will the internet be more chaotic? Will the power go out? I don't know what will come. I can't predict the future. I don't think anybody can. But I think countries will continue to develop different ways to defend themselves in cyberspace because the threats, there's no foreseeable future where those threats disappear. So if you have questions now, I would love to talk about them. That's one reason that I'm glad to have people in the room. If you want to email me later, this is a fine address that gets to me. And I certainly look forward to hearing about the research too. Sure.
Are these slides going to be available as of?
I am glad to share them.
Earlier you said that sanctions were like one of the really stronger tools to help prevent things. What would stop somebody from just using some sort of VPN or something else to get around it?
Well, two answers to that. One, sanctions don't always work, which is the US can say like, these hackers in a foreign country, we're going to sanction them. It's hard to tell that that achieves the desired effect because they're just going to stay in that foreign country and keep hacking. That's what normally happens. Can they use a VPN to get around, to circumvent? Yeah, that's that sort of redirection where it's hard to do attribution. That happens all the time. And so the US and companies spend a lot of time trying to figure out like, where are these attacks actually coming from? To a large degree, a company who's being attacked doesn't care who's doing it. They just want it to stop. Countries do care a lot about attribution. They tend to be the ones who care like, oh, this was North Korea attacking us, for example. But if you're Microsoft, probably you don't care if it was North Korea or any other country on the planet. You just want it to stop. What else?
Yeah, I do have a question that like recently in the past 1 month, there is a very famous AI agent called OpenClaw. And how do you view the risks posed by people they install OpenClaw themselves? And how should like organizations, companies to defend those kind of risks?
Yeah, that is a difficult technological, but also sort of business process. I mean, everything is a risk decision to some degree. One of the reasons I like economics is these all feel like questions about economics. Should I do this? What is the risk? What is the risk if I don't do it? What is the cost if I do nothing, like opportunity cost? Because if I spend money downloading that software, it means I can't spend that money on something else. So trade-offs happen all the time in cybersecurity. Specifically for like software like that, I think we have to like do defense in depth the way that we always have, which is assume that that software is malicious. And how do I safely run it even if I believe it's malicious? That's what a version of zero trust is trust nothing. Don't trust that my computer is safe. Don't trust Apple. Don't trust an AI company. So you have to build in those layers of protection to live in a world where you don't want to have to trust things.
Well, all of that, will change if you are, being attacked by an AI agent, right?
I have a research question I want to look into, which is, can I tell if it's a human or AI attacking me? Because I don't necessarily know how different it will be, other than maybe velocity, the speed of the attack. But humans automate things too. The reason, so Anthropic detected that their AI was being used for cyber attacks because the attackers were sort of sloppy. They weren't trying very hard. I think if the attackers had tried hard, probably they wouldn't have gotten caught, at least in the way that they did. But I don't always know how I will know that it's AI or not.
Well, the dangerous part is the 0-day attack because, well, if you have generative, AI, well, you never know what's going to be the next attack pattern that you, in a sense, you will have creative attacker, running at higher pace compared to human. So, I don't know. This is quite dangerous.
At least theoretically. I have asked the AI companies if they're afraid of that, because they know sort of the capabilities. They tell me that they are not worried about that today. Like, yes, it could happen. Yes, the AI could lie to us about how something works or whether it can be defended or not. It's a good thought exercise. I just don't think we're quite there yet. Another thing that AI creates is a lot of noise. I think we see this in AI generated code. Now we're seeing it with AI generated vulnerabilities, where AI finds all these bugs in software. People submit the bugs to the vendor, and the vendors are overwhelmed. They have too many bug reports to try and deal with. So much so that there are companies now that say, you must pay us to submit a bug in our code. Right? Raise the bar to say, don't send us 1,000 things. You have to pay us, I don't know, $1 for every one that you submit, so that you have some skin in the game, so that people aren't just submitting AI slop, even in cyberbugs.
Yeah, but going back to software cause vulnerability, if you go from the development perspective, why vulnerability exists, we know it's mainly things that human did not really recognize in the compilation or the, or the code generation, and you can now have the code, the concept of safe code, and but if you look at the how AI shaped things now, we'll find that this practice or things that the software engineering rigor, develop over the years might be a short circuit, from a development perspective. And this is actually can be dangerous because now if I am, developing a code, training an AI machine and so on, I could intentionally have this vulnerability there. Now, and UMBC students, just graduates just get this code and started to integrate it, develop another application, and you know what? At the end, well, the customer, they have vulnerability in their system that was, that came because the process was short circuit. So I don't know if you know of how the industry actually dealing with this problem, because in the past, I worked in the space, and I know how difficult to get the software, certified by the because this is safety critical, and but the developers at the time, and all of them were human.
Right.
So you have this, PDR and CDR in order to find out what, whether this is actually making sense or not. You look at the code reviews. But now if we look at with the rush now with using in getting code, using generative AI to generate code, well, how can you ensure that the code is safe, especially in with the growth of cyber physical systems? So even if the airplanes is extreme, you can say, well, fine, this is very slow based technology development, the stuff that flies 20 years old, that is okay. But trains and cars and so on, this stuff actually is high pace, those self-driving cars, coming out, how do you know the code is actually doesn't have vulnerability? And especially if it's being used, the AI agent itself or the generative tool itself, being intentionally being inserted there as a vulnerability. So in the sense of becoming malicious LLMs, from that perspective.
Yeah, we live in a world where I think things are as complex as they have ever been. Like code is as complicated as it's ever been. I don't see any solution to that. Software understanding is a sort of term of art now that people are talking about. Like, what are all the ways, like formal methods and reverse engineering, that you can even know what does this software do? You inherited this code. You're trying to make some fixes or enhancements, but just understanding what it does in a complex system is non-trivial. Lots of companies are doing sort of continuous testing for that reason, not just like at build time or at deploy time, but all the time, like continually sort of looking for bugs and trying to fix them. AI is helping to that to some degree, but even old tools like static analysis tools still find things the AI doesn't find.
Yeah, Rick,
Hey, Josiah, Hey, Josiah, great talk. Question. What is your take on AI and the attribution problem in cyberspace? You talk about a lot of generating noise, and there's a heck of a lot of noise out there, but the attribution problem is still with us after 20, 30 years. And from an intelligence and targeting perspective, I think that opens up quite a Pandora's box. Wouldn't you agree that if you have an NGO or a private company using AI to see who's attacking us, and they strike back, they could be striking back against the hospital who had a server pop somewhere, and now the hospital goes down. So, kind of curious your thoughts on AI in the whole attribution issue, and even how that affects like targeting. If you look at how the DoD is using AI to analyze satellite photos, let's say, to decide where we're going to drop Tomahawk.
Yeah, I certainly don't think it's any better today, right? We have a lot of powerful tools and ways to help augment humans, but humans still are not absolved of their responsibility. I think that's why most countries have said we won't do autonomous weapons today. We just don't have enough trust that they will execute the right thing. I don't know if that's going to hold for forever. I think there will be lots of mistakes. We probably are seeing some of that now. So I think it's important to have policies and procedures, let alone tech, that holds that line a little bit. Another area where I worry a little bit is just like lifting code. Like AI recommends some code. Like, here's how I want to implement a crypt library. And it said, okay, here's the code. I don't want people to just trust that, right? I want some intervention there that says, oh, actually, you should import this whole library so that the SBOM at least knows that there was vulnerabilities in that code, and we can sort of automate that. Lots of people were doing that with Stack Overflow for a long time, like just grabbing a little bit of code, putting it in theirs. But it's really prevalent today, and that worries me.
I'm reminded of that old saying from IBM that a computer should never make a management decision. And I think that's becoming more true than ever, that we need to keep humans in the loop and do more than just accept what the computer is providing us in terms of wisdom and insight.
That's a good thing for the AI market too, because nowadays with the decline in the CS enrollment, students, looking at it, well, maybe AI will take our jobs, but actually, no. And it seems to me that AI is creating more jobs because we have to also do some cleanup. That's what I did.
Yeah, I was wondering about spam. Spam isn't exactly a cyber attack, but it is an attack on our attention. And I gotten a lot more spam, I think, in the last couple of weeks because of some data breaches where, my accounts are known to more people. So how does spam fit into this picture in your mind?
That's another problem I think I wish would go away, and I don't know how to make it go away because there's so many incentives for the attackers to send it. Unless they had to pay a penny per email, I'd be willing to pay a penny to send my emails. And I think it would deter them sending millions of them. I mean, it certainly is an area where machine learning has been very helpful. Like those spam filters are remarkably good, but things still get through. And that is a cyber threat because it leads to social engineering, right? It's not just garbage that I can throw away. It's, oh, click this link. It's your driver's license is going to be revoked if you don't click here in the next 5 minutes, right? Preying on our sort of human weaknesses. I would love some technology where I could click on every link in every email and never get infected. Can I have it both ways? Because today it's so much burden on users to decide, is it real? Is it safe? Is it worth the risk? That problem is as bad as it's ever been. Because it is the number one way that people get in, like, machines get infected and breaches out. People are just tricked.
You know, when I got the text, my wife actually got a text message from the bank, as if from the bank, looks extremely authentic.
Yeah.
Call this number, there's a hacking, to your bank account when I double check on a certain transaction. And when I got the message and I was looking, I started to look really carefully and I found, some inconsistency. Well, this seemed like a spam, but looking at how clever it is to spam someone, and it, the number, practically the only thing I noticed is that you put the numbers in, and I checked online. I found this number is for a healthcare company rather than for the bank. So I thought, well, this doesn't make sense. If the bank is just the number has to be one of them. It seemed like the number was used in the past and someone bought it, but taken all shapes, even graphics. Now this was an image.
AI is to blame for some of that,
Yeah.
because we used to teach people just look for typos.
Yeah.
The attackers are going to send ugly, like poorly formatted emails. Those are the ones that are bad. That heuristic is gone because AI can make beautiful, perfect grammar emails now.
Yeah, so it seemed like my point is that the cybersecurity has to go beyond the conventional patterns. You have to look at the semantics.
Yes.
And this is actually probably another level of complexity, because you cannot really look for things like grammars or typos, or even you have to digest what is there and look at the context and judge. And this is very difficult from a defense perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So currently the AI company, so they use kind of spider bots to gathering the information from online or open source. And do you think this is a kind of like cyber attack to like individuals or like the content creators? And how do you think like the individual can defend on this kind of like information gathered for their chain on the AI?
Yeah, depending on how we define attack, it very much could be. One of the AI companies, for example, read all the content in one of my books without my permission. And there's a very large lawsuit against that company, and I'm going to get some money as a result. Is that an attack against me? I would say so. I didn't give them permission. This is also sort of a privacy thing that I think the companies are wrestling with. Like, how do we allow technology sort of access to things with the right permission that society is okay with? So it's as much of a societal decision as anything like that. But my brother writes music, and he's very worried that like somebody will mimic his style and his way of composing, and that he will not be compensated for that. And he feels he should be. So lots of law comes down to, does it feel okay or not? And if we all as society are uncomfortable, then we need to change.
Yeah. So do you think like is it currently any defense technique like to against this kind of like taking as a training data?
I mean, if they can't reach it, then they can't have it. So if it's not on the internet, if your book is not digital, if you don't write books, like those are defenses, I suppose, but they're not very satisfying. It's not like I can put something on my webpage and I say, don't look at this, right? There are supposed to be ways to do that with robot files that say, don't crawl this, but not everybody respects those rules.
Yeah.
Is there a way like you can find whether your website has been crawled or not? Like if you have restricted it not to do, but someone has did your website has crawled it and took all the data from there and used for the model, can you find it like I mean, who did those things?
To some degree, like my web server keeps very detailed logs. Yeah, of every request. The request almost always includes the name of the bot. If a company is very transparent, like Google's crawler, I think says Google crawler. And if I don't want Google to crawl, I can block that user agent, and Google is very trustworthy in doing that. But an untrustworthy agent is going to lie, right? They're going to put something else there. They're going to make it look like a human, which is why lots of websites try to determine the sort of humanness without having to rely on what does that user agent say or what IP did it come from? Because a human, for example, doesn't tend to browse 500 web pages a second. Like it's sort of not possible. So if somebody's browsing my website 500 pages a second, probably it's not real. And I can just block that IP address. But then they might try through a VPN and do it again. So yes, you can do a little bit of sleuthing about that, but it's a cat and mouse kind of game.
Yeah, so today, as we know, there almost all cybersecurity mechanisms rely on cryptography, right? And with the development of quantum computing, do you think the quantum computing will destroy or disrupt the system, the cybersecurity system we have today? And how should people prepare for that?
This is a very big topic of conversation among policymakers, among technology people. We already know how to sort of there are changes that we can do now before quantum computers really are problematic for cybersecurity. Post-quantum cryptography is this phrase for new algorithms that are resistant to those kind of attacks. So the US government and lots of other people are saying, time to update the computers now with those new algorithms so that whenever in the future quantum exists in a way that's sort of practical, that we're already safe. We don't have to wait for that. So that is sort of where the push is now. I mean, I don't think the world is going to fall apart when there is a very powerful quantum computer. It can do some things, it cannot do everything. But I do think it's important for software companies and vendors to do that preparation now because it's already the right thing to do.
I couldn't help but notice that, I mean, I don't think you really touched on cybersecurity of US critical infrastructure. Do you have any insight into the state of play of kind of public-private partnership going on in that space, or, I don't know, emerging threats in that space? That seems like, when I think of US self-defense or self-defense generally in the cyber warfighting domain, I think of that specifically.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security, for example, considers critical infrastructure one of the most important things that they need to protect: power, water, right, transportation, the financial economy. So all of those fall under pillars that they care a lot about. They are involved with those ISACs, for example, like the power ISAC. I think it's called critical infrastructure generally. And so they have conversations together and they say, can we share government information with those companies? Like the government knows about attacks that sometimes the company doesn't even know they're being attacked. So they do try and share that as much as possible. But at least in America, the government can't, for the most part, make those companies do things. They have to come to those desires on their own in general. And so the incentives have been a tough thing. Like, why would we spend a lot of money? We don't really, if a power company says, we don't see the attacks, we can't afford to do it, we're going to lose money. Those are hard choices. And so if they don't have the right incentives, they tend to either not do them or not do them sufficiently well. We're better to this is one of those places where I think we are better today than we have been in the past. The critical infrastructure sectors know that attacks are real now. They sort of had their head in the sand for a long time. They're starting to deploy resources. There are companies now that can help them out. Dragos is one here in Maryland that helps power companies, for example, defend themselves. But there's a huge need. Like the water sector doesn't have a Dragos, and they probably need some help like that. So there's a long way to go. But yeah, if the power in this room goes out and we don't know why, well, whose job is that? Like, is it, who would respond? There's a lot of authorities here that we haven't quite worked out. At least we haven't had to yet.
It seems like there's a massive hole in the policy space that needs to get filled in before getting good movement.
Unfortunately, it takes disaster sometimes to fill those gaps. I wrote a paper a couple of months ago about sort of large-scale internet outages. What if the whole internet goes down, not for an hour, but for like a month? It isn't clear who in the United States is responsible for dealing with that, or what dealing with it even means. Like, what is the incident response plan for that? I compared that to COVID, which is like, there was not a very clear hierarchy of authority for healthcare during COVID, and we saw that sort of play out publicly. And so I took that example and said, what if there was a sort of COVID-like cyber pandemic? What would happen? And mostly I didn't have the answers. We said there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done for the exact same reasons you highlighted.
Thank you.
Is it clear in the United States who is government, what part of the government is responsible for cybersecurity strategy? What parts?
Yes and no. So the cyber strategy that I talked about that came from the Office of the National Cyber Director, ONCD. I guess they believe they were the ones who would put out that strategy. It didn't come from CISA, it didn't come from the National Security Council. Those people, I'm sure, weighed in, but it did come from ONCD. But if there was a massive cyber outage, I don't know what ONCD's role would be. Would they be the ones directing things to happen? I don't actually know.
I see that Donald Trump has just announced an extended version of that today, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that I was talking about. It's quite short. It just came out a couple of days ago. It's got an intro letter, and then it's like 3 pages or something.
Well, maybe it's just hitting the news today.
That's possible. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. JR has a question.
Hi, Josiah. First of all, really appreciate the opportunity to attend this, especially someone like myself. I work for South Metro Fire Rescue out in the Denver metro area. We support about 500,000 people. I am the security team, so I am the only person dedicated to cybersecurity. So I was curious from your perspective, are there things, or is there anything that you feel like agencies like us, where we are considered critical infrastructure, things that you think we should be more aware of? Are there threats or concerns that you have that might particularly target agencies like ours?
First, thank you for being that person for such an important organization. I'm sure it's a very frustrating sometimes not to have all the resources that you probably wish you had. I don't know specifically in that sector what the answer is. Partners and friends, like joining an ISAC is kind of an expensive thing to do, but having trusted communities is really important, so that if somebody can tip you off or say, we're seeing this in our sector, there's a lot of, I belong to like private Slack groups that do this too, that say, we're seeing this kind of event happen in our ecosystem, or other people seeing it too. Just building those trust relationships honestly goes as far as almost anything. That's what I think.
Right, we're members of MSISAC, and then also I'm also on our Homeland Security Advisory Committee, or HSAC it's called. And so I think one of the biggest challenges for us, though, is driving that actual security change. Sometimes it's you can't get the buy-in to get something patched or something, a piece of hardware changed, right? And also you're also trying to avoid being blamed for an incident that happens because something didn't get done. You know what I mean? So I want to plug that. But then also when you were talking about sovereignty and the concept of that, one thing that came to mind, there's an article that is from let me just look up the address here. It's from West Point, as a matter of fact, where they talk about space pirates in outer space and attribution of non-state actors, right? And one of the things that they mentioned within that article, I think maybe you've read that, was Starlink, for example. Starlink playing a role in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Starlink being an American company, does Starlink's role within that conflict where they're providing internet access to a country that the U.S. isn't necessarily directly involved in that conflict, does that mean that they're forcing the U.S.'s hand into that conflict to say, hey, Russia could say, hey, you're giving them support, you're helping them out, you're an American company, well, hey, America, you need to stop, you need to prevent them from helping the Ukraine, otherwise that means you're helping us. Do you kind of get what I'm kind of getting at there?
Yes, I mean, it might be intentional or it might just be a innocent bystander, right? It might just be somebody who owns the wires and happens to be involved in a conflict.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that both can happen.
Alan Sherman put a question in the chat. How do the national cyber strategies of other countries compare with that of the USA? And what, if anything, has the UN said about cyber strategies?
I have not looked at them in quite a while, probably 10 years. A long time ago, I was looking to see about sharing agreements, like which countries share with other countries, because that was informative to me from a defensive perspective, just to know, like, if one got attacked, who are they going to tell? And sometimes a strategy will talk a little bit about that, but I haven't seen them recently. At that time, there was a lot of uniformity in we are going to defend ourselves. I am not aware of a lot that sort of look like this current one that just came out, which says we're going to be very offensive. That I'm trying to imagine what the world would look like if every country sort of said that. Would that be a better place or not a better place? There is a book that came out called the Talon Manual, which comes about because of an organization that gets international companies together in Tallinn, Estonia, or has done this several times. You talk about cyber norms, and it's it has been non-binding. The US has not agreed to all of these things. But if you go flip through this book, it's really interesting to see lots of countries sort of want norms to be a certain way. Like, we will all agree, gentleman's agreement, like not to attack hospitals, for example. And to see which countries sort of go along with that and which ones don't. The United States has been the one who doesn't want to go along with stuff, right? They sort of want to have the freedom to do whatever they want to do. But the United States is a little bit unique in that. Lots of countries of the world, especially the ones without as much power and resources to do what they want, kind of want everybody to get along a little bit better so that they're not as vulnerable. Yeah, it looks like Rick knows more than me about the UN. Well, these are great questions, everybody. I really appreciate them.
Yeah, well, this is a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Now, let's thank our speaker.
Thanks for the invite, everybody.
And I think there's food in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the food.
Yeah. Everyone, please take some food with you.
That's very good.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, we'll draw in the something. Yeah, it's a big.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to visit.
Thank you.
Do you mind if we take a photo?
Sure, no problem.
We need to use a carpet, the printed, the first.
Okay, yeah. Would you mind, like, I mean, showcase your PowerPoint?
Sure. I think I have to rejoin. How do I do that?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe if you use the ACM, I think.
Is there an HDMI? Does that work? Might work.
Yeah. Oh, it's working. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that works. Technology is amazing when it. Where would you like to be?
Oh, you want to get it? Or maybe use my. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you take files or? Oh, yeah, maybe you can join. Okay. Yeah.
And anyone who else wants to?
Yep. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Yep, good.
Thank you.
And yeah, we will post the slides and the records to our web page of the ACM chapter.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
You wanna take some food?
I might take something with me. Yeah.
I do.
Good afternoon at work. Need some something else.
I think